Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of One Step at a Time with Charlie Chen. And today is episode 21, and the title will be Integrity versus Utility. Now, how did I arrive at this, right? Well, I guess in the past year, a lot of people like to talk about how they're the arbiter of truth. I mean, as a symptom of pushing for things like fake news and things like that, it's as if people suddenly cares a lot about truth, right? Like they talk about things, well, comedians joke about things that's not funny, or they talk about things that are outright horrendous, but then they say, hey, it's free speech, it's the truth. I should be able to speak the truth, right? Well, I mean, truth is good, but if you really observe people, you come to realize that people only like the truth when it's convenient, isn't it? Like for instance, and I probably said this before, like you know the quote, the customer is always right, right? Notice how people like to say that when they're the customer or when they're the management trying to get an employee to do something that they don't want to do, right? But the full quote for it is the customer is always right in matters of taste, right? Well, that's the thing. Like people don't bring it up unless it's in their benefit, right? So so in actuality, people don't actually care about the truth. People care more about being right. If you come to think of it, management, especially in companies or in group dynamics, love being right because being right means strength, means clarity, means understanding, means they know where to go, right? And being wrong means weakness, confusion, and all that. So, in today's world, unfortunately, we live in a world with lots of information, but whether there are meaning behind it or if it is actionable is very debatable, right? And so, as I look back at this whole situation, it goes something like this. Truth is fine, and it would be good that everyone loves the truth, but majority of the time, if a truth is not useful to someone, it's very interesting. More often than not, they're gonna leave it out unless they're trying to be a good friend or they're trying to give the whole picture, right? Like when people swear to the Bible at court, it says, do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, and the whole truth? Right? Well, that's the whole truth, right? Because you can lie through omission. Like you can say the sky is always blue or something without explaining why the sky is blue, right? Things like that. Maybe the sky is not blue, but because of how the light, then is the sky really is blue and things like that. No, that's too much. But so people don't actually like truth unless it's useful, right? And that's where the integrity comes in. And then being right, even if it is through lies or through power or through whatever, has its utilities, right? It's useful to be right because if you can be right, you can justify getting paid. You can justify asking others to do things when, especially in 50-50 situations where you don't know which one is right and which one is wrong, if you can just step out and say, I'm right, you essentially vetoed all the other people, right? Especially when there's not enough resource to pursue all the possible options. So, so yeah, the world we live in currently, people really like being right more than the truth. And but that's the thing, it makes me think about like the different iterations, right? Like essentially it's like a slider between true integrity and utility, right? Between truth and being right. And on one side, let's say everything is true, right? What if nobody can lie? Nobody and everyone is brutally honest, right? Let's say, imagine being raised up as a kid and instead of saying, I want this for you because it's right for you, or you should listen to me unless Santa Claus gets mad. Imagine parents are just brutally honest with what they say. It's like, well, I'm the only choice that you have. You have to listen to me, else, well, I'm going to leave you to die or whatever, right? That's, but that's the thing. You can be truthful without being on purposely malicious, right? But that takes work, and people don't want to work. People will just want to be right, right? So, like, the more I have lived in this world, the more I realize that if I want to if I want to stay in the light in the sense that I want to talk about truth, I want to explore things earnestly and to have and be able to say yes to things and say no to things honestly from the heart, it takes a lot of work because sure I can just lie and make things happen and it will save a lot of brain power, but it and it's the same thing with like money. If you really think about it, it's like going after money but not after value, right? Because money is just a piece of paper, right? But at the end of the day, it's like what defines your value, right? And it's the same thing with like real estate. If you really think about it, like how like sure, if you have, I don't know, $200,000, you can buy a house, right? But did you really buy the house? What I'm talking about is buying a house is so much more than just buying a house, right? Because you actually need the ability to pay the taxes, maintain it, fix all the different damages and accidentals. And if some bad guy want to be mean to you to take away your house, whether it's gangs or drugs or some government official lay their eyes on your property, what do you do to protect it, right? So it's so much more than just simply being truthful or being right. You can't just meet the basic requirement because there's so much more to it, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is it's not easy being true because people oftentimes don't like the truth because truth is inconvenient to them. Like, let's say your friend is very excited about making a purchase, and then you point out how it's actually not going to serve them in the long term, right? But that's the thing. What is good is a point of view, right? Maybe your friend is having such a bad time that they need that short-term happiness boost so that they don't crash and burn before getting to the next stage in their life, right? It's hard to say. So, truth, personally, you know how they say like honesty is the best policy? Is it though? I don't know. I think if we can, it's almost like humility, right? If we can have the humility to put away our pride and our desire to be right all the time and be truthful. I think being truthful is actually very important and might even be a good thing, because let's say everyone in the group says that they want something good to happen to the group, and they're truthful, and they're not conveniently leaving out truth, they're telling the whole truth, then I think that group is going to do well, right? But the thing is, humans aren't perfect like that, right? We're not angels, we're not gods. Heck, we aren't perfect because we can't even be devils properly, because how can you consistently do evil, the kind of evil that you will even eat up your own kin, right? That's hard to do. But that's the thing. In the utopia where people have humility and they value truth, it would be great. So, but it doesn't happen like that, right? Because a lot of times people don't know, and people look for leaders. And when we start looking for guidance and leaders, that's where people being right is more important than being truthful, right? Because it's the same thing with like those situations where when it comes to war, how they, I don't know, destroy the path of retreat, so the soldiers have to fight harder to survive because they know there's no way to retreat, and they actually have to like push forward, and they fight even harder. That's what being right is almost like, right? In other words, the truth doesn't matter, you focus on results. And in a way, we live in a country that focuses on results more than truth, right? In other words, we worship power more than truth. And but that's the thing. It's very curious because power sometimes is also very truthful, right? Because as they say, survival of the fittest, right? So as might makes right, as they say. But that's the thing. Suppose, and this is actually shifting from totally true all the time to, let's say, everything is utility, everything is about power, right? Suppose everything is about power and everything is about utility, right? I mean, certain quotes cover it. Things like, if you're not cheating, you're not trying hard enough. Horrible, but if you think about it, yeah, like for instance, you think about people who sell their bodies for the entertainment industry, right? As in, in Asia, although actually all around the world, stories about like female performers sleeping with the director or something like that just so that they can star in whatever, right? If you're in a truth-based world, you would say that's wrong, that's immoral, whatever, right? But if you live in a utility-based world, then I invite you to think about it like this, right? Everybody else have spent thousands of hours, years to become good at this craft, right? But these people, in addition to doing their craft, they're willing to sacrifice their purity, their soul, or whatever, in order to climb higher. And if you look at it from that way, based on how much they have given up, perhaps they deserve it, right? And this is not to excuse it one way or another, it just is, right? So yeah, sometimes it really does feel like that. If you're not cheating, you're not trying hard enough. But that's the thing. It's like the quote, live by the sword, die by the sword. Once you sort of invite or on purposely live in this power dynamic of of a being right is everything, utility based world, you essentially have picked up the sword into the power game. As in, and that's the thing, power exists everywhere. And I'm talking about people to people power, your ability to influence things, right? And the moment you step into such an arena, obviously, short term, it might be very feasible because you can see what you can see, right? But when it comes to power, there's always a stronger one somewhere out there. And that's the thing. Sometimes you miss out on things that you can no longer attain once you walk the path of power. I think you've seen, and there are plenty of, and it's actually kind of interesting. There are plenty of like films, like especially the Yakuza films or the Yakuza films and the Mafia films and things like that. The classic fairy tale ending for these kind of films is that, this guy led the exciting and hard life, and then while the saxophone romantic music is playing in the background with waves crashing into the docks. But the fairy tale ending for these is that he's able to achieve so much despite how evil everything was, and they were able to walk away and live a normal life. Think about it. The fairy tale ending for these kind of things is to live a normal life. But that's the thing, it's not always possible. And it gets really weird, right? Because like when you enter this power-based world, in a way you say goodbye to, now of course there's also power in academic, like university settings, right? But it's so much more contained than like the corporate world, right? So when you're in such a thing, the moment you decide to pursue the game of power, you become a pawn on the chessboard. Now, of course, you can argue that it's better than being an unwilling victim, like an unwilling, because like sometimes, like when people's power gets too much, they start affecting people who was never part of the game in the first place. Like for instance, water rights being bought off or sold off for data centers or random farms around the country, right? They didn't plan to be part of the things, but there are unwitting players or recipients of the beating of the power game, right? So, that's the thing, right? Willingly walk towards it and grab the sword, but do know that once you pick it up, it's very hard to put it down, right? And in a way, that's why I envy women and children because they don't have to pick up the sword. Like they can always choose to, but they never had to. But as a man, you sort of are forced to. Oh, society think of you as a weakling and step all over you and stomp over you like a floor mat, right? But anyway, so yeah, between integrity and utility, I think both are very useful. The way I see it, you need integrity so that you have clear vision of what's going on. Like you have to be humble but you're also willing to accept things that might even be hurtful or not useful for your case, but in the long run would be beneficial, right? So Like, for instance, something that would be almost heresy in this country would be like, there's a possibility of, like, being truthful to yourself, there's a possibility that America may be in the decline, right? Whether it's true or not, I'm not sure, but it's a possible possibility, right? But on the flip side, you think about how, no, it's possible, because you think about like how the rest of the world is trying to either come up with their own currencies like BRICS, or improving their military, right? Their own military. Now, in a way, I think it was prompted by the US, because US said, hey, we shouldn't be footing the bill to defend Europe all the time. So, right? And so, yeah, on one hand, you do want integrity and the ability to sense what is true. Because if you don't know what is true, then what are you really fighting for, right? Because, and in a way, you sort of have to have truth to be able to return to the normal life after you pick up the sword. Because without knowing what's the baseline, because truth is essentially the baseline, everything, it gets warped because of manipulation and people's desire to be right, to win, right? But if you don't know what baseline truth is, then what are you fighting for? Because the landscape is already warped. Even if you win, you're essentially getting a lesser product, right? It's an abstraction. For instance, it's like being the richest person or the most powerful on the internet. But the internet is just an abstraction in the real world, right? At the end of the day, think about the tech billionaires. They still buy mansions, right? It's not like, hey, I'm number one in the internet. I have no more. I don't need a real world representation of my power or of my wealth or whatever, right? So you have that. But it's also important to be right. Now the question is, and this is a good question that you should ask yourself, is, are you willing to lie to be right? Right? Because if you can, the best possible scenario, and this is why people think truth is inconvenient, the best possible scenario is when you're telling the truth or when you're following the truth and you happen to be right. And people love that so much. They will shove it down your throat whenever that happens. So perhaps find a way so that you can be right and truthful all the time, right? But sometimes it's not possible. And when it's not possible, if you continue to chase the truth, then you're brave and you think about long term. And if you pursue being right, then at least I guess you're ambitious or something, right? So that's the thing. There's no wrong way of going about this. And so when there's no wrong way to go about this, but anyway, I think that's what makes all of us different and special, because some of us pursue truth and some of us pursue being right. So, and that's the world, why the world is the way it is. And both can be true at the same time, and both can be powerful at the same time. But yeah, it's something to think about for sure. Anyways, that's enough for today. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.